I paid off my parents' home and sent them to Europe, but at a family gathering my mother laughed and called me her walking wallet, so I froze every account and awoke to 31 missed calls. 31M, just a single day ago, I was seen as the golden child, the son who had done everything right, the provider who made his parents' lives comfortable and easy after they had spent so many years sacrificing for me. But now, only 24 hours later, I am no longer that son in their eyes. I am the villain, the outsider, the son who dared to say enough. And all of it happened because of a comment I was never meant to hear, a comment that exposed the fragile truth behind 20 years of financial generosity. From the time I was young, my parents had always taught me about the importance of loyalty, sacrifice, and commitment to family. My father worked as a teacher, devoting his life to education even when it meant long hours and modest pay. My mother spent her life as a nurse, caring for patients through exhausting shifts while still coming home each evening to care for me. Those lessons shaped me. I grew into adulthood believing that family meant standing together no matter what, that if one of us fell behind, the others would step forward to help. And when my career in technology began to thrive, it felt natural to extend that hand of support back to the people who had given me everything. By the age of 25, I had launched a consulting firm that took off faster than I ever anticipated. Clients poured in, projects multiplied, and before long I was making more money than I could have ever imagined. At first, I didn't even know what to do with it all. I was single, I didn't have children, and my lifestyle was relatively simple. The obvious answer, at least in my heart, was to share it with the people who had made me who I was. My parents. Started modestly. My father mentioned one evening that the mortgage payments were becoming harder to manage on his teacher's salary. My mother quietly expressed worries about her pension and whether it would be enough for retirement. Without thinking twice, I offered to help with the payments. Felt like the most natural thing in the world. That small gesture slowly grew into something larger. When medical bills appeared, I covered them. When the roof needed repairs, I paid for it. Before long, I was not just helping occasionally. I had completely taken over the mortgage payments, covering their biggest burden entirely. Then came my grandest gift. Just last month, I walked into their condo holding a folder with the documents that said the entire mortgage was paid in full. $180,000. Cleared. Erased. Gone. It was an early Christmas gift. Something to ensure that they would never have to worry about their home again. The look on their faces that day made me believe every penny had been worth it. But that wasn't enough. I wanted to do more. For 15 years, my parents had talked about traveling to Europe. Rome, Florence, Paris, Venice. All names that drifted into family conversations with a dreamlike quality. Always dismissed with a sigh and a comment about money. They said they could never afford such a trip. So I decided to make it happen for them. I booked a 3-week vacation that included first-class flights, luxury hotels, guided tours, and enough spending money to allow them to indulge without hesitation. The trip cost me $25,000, but I did not care. Watching their faces light up when I revealed the surprise made it seem invaluable. They left 2 weeks ago, and each day they sent me photos. My father grinning at the Colosseum, my mother smiling beneath the Eiffel Tower, the two of them sipping wine in Tuscany. I was proud. This, I told myself, was the true purpose of success. To give back. Then yesterday happened. My cousin's birthday party brought the extended family together at my aunt's house. Normally, I avoided these gatherings because work consumed me, but having just completed a major project, I decided to attend. My parents were still abroad, so it seemed like a good chance to reconnect with relatives. The evening began well. Laughter, conversation, people asking me about work, offering congratulations on my recent achievements. For a while, everything felt normal. But life has a way of exposing truth when you least expect it. I stepped outside to take a business call, which dragged on longer than planned. As I returned, I passed by the kitchen window. From the patio below, voices drifted out, familiar and comforting at first, until the words sank in. I heard my aunt asking my mother how they could afford such luxury on their European vacation. And then I heard my mother laugh. a light, carefree laugh that I had never associated with serious matters. Her answer shattered something inside me. She told my aunt not to worry about money because I had taken care of everything. She boasted that the condo was paid off, the trip was free, and that I would likely pay for whatever came next. My aunt sounded surprised, even a bit concerned, asking if she felt guilty for taking so much from me. And that was when my mother spoke the words that still echo in my mind. Why would I feel guilty? He has more money than he knows what to do with. At this point, he's just our walking wallet. She laughed again, a laugh that felt cruel, dismissive, almost mocking. I stood there frozen, hoping I misheard, hoping she would add that she was only joking. But instead, she continued. She said that I was so desperate for approval, so eager to feel important, that I would pay any price to keep them happy. She even admitted that it was almost too easy to manipulate me. If they wanted something, they would simply plant the idea weeks in advance, and I would convince myself it was my own thought when I offered to cover the expense. I do not know how long I stood there, listening to my own mother explain how naive I was. 10 minutes? Longer? My hands trembled as my heart sank. I finally turned away and walked to my car, my mind a storm of anger and betrayal. I drove home, barely aware of the road before me, and spent the entire night staring at my computer screen. I pulled up bank statements, credit card records, every financial record I could find. The total hit me like a freight train. In the past 7 years alone, I had given them over $400,000. $400,000. Mortgage payments, car loans, medical bills, home renovations, vacations, emergency funds, retirement contributions. I had been their safety net, their provider, their silent partner in every financial decision. By the time morning came, I knew what I had to do. I called my bank and froze every account with their names attached. The joint savings account I had set up for emergencies. The credit card I had added them to for convenience. The investment account I had been building for their retirement. All of it. Then I called my attorney and removed them as beneficiaries from my life insurance and retirement accounts. I even rescinded the power of attorney they held over my healthcare decisions. It hit me then that they had positioned themselves to benefit from every aspect of my life, even my death. The calls began around noon. At first, my father sounded confused, saying their card had been declined at lunch. My mother's calls followed, growing more insistent, then desperate. I ignored them all, needing time to think. But by evening, my phone showed 31 missed calls. The voicemails began with confusion, shifted into panic, and finally turned into my mother's sobs begging me to explain. When I finally answered, my father's voice trembled as he asked what had happened. I told him I was restructuring my finances and they would need to handle their own expenses going forward. Silence followed. Then he asked if they had done something wrong. I repeated my mother's words from the party. The walking wallet, the manipulation, the lack of genuine appreciation. He tried to explain it away, saying my mother sometimes said things she didn't mean to impress family. But the damage was done. For the first time in years, I realized that what I had thought was love and gratitude might have been nothing more than dependence. And now, I am left wondering, was I ever truly valued? Or was I only ever the walking wallet they laughed about behind my back? I sat in my apartment that night, the weight of every word my mother had spoken pressing down on my chest like a stone. My laptop screen glowed in the darkness, illuminating years of bank records and transactions that spoke louder than any memory could. Each entry was a reminder of every time I had believed I was doing something selfless, every time I thought I was proving my love and gratitude to my parents. And yet, hearing her laugh about how easy it was to manipulate me turned those sacrifices into weapons used against me. I remembered the day I first decided to cover their mortgage completely. My father looked at me with tears in his eyes, a mixture of relief and pride. He told me that I was a better man at 28 than he had ever been at 58. My mother hugged me so tightly I thought she might never let go. At that moment, I believed I was their hero. But now, sitting alone in that dark room, I could not help but question whether those reactions were genuine or simply the beginning of a cycle where they realized just how much influence they held over me. The more I stared at those numbers, the more the betrayal grew. $400,000. That was not just a number on a screen. It was the representation of every night I spent working late. Every weekend I sacrificed personal time to grow my business, every decision to save rather than spend on myself. And what had it brought me? A reputation as the walking wallet. A title one never asked for and could never escape once it had been spoken aloud. By morning, my decision felt clearer than anything I had ever chosen before. I could no longer allow myself to be seen as a bank account instead of a son. My first step was to call the bank. My voice shook slightly as I spoke to the representative, requesting every account linked to my parents be frozen immediately. She asked me twice if I was sure, and each time I repeated my answer firmly. Yes. I had never been more certain. Next, I called my attorney. He listened quietly as I explained the situation, then methodically took down notes to ensure that my parents were removed from every possible legal or financial tie to me. Beneficiaries? Gone. Power of attorney? Revoked. Life insurance and retirement accounts? Rewritten. For the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of control returning to me. The calls from my parents began soon after. My father's first call sounded confused, even innocent. He asked if there was an issue with the bank because his card had been declined at lunch. His tone suggested a minor inconvenience, something easily fixed with a quick call. But I did not answer. Then my mother's calls started. At first, she sounded curious, but as the hours passed, the tone shifted to desperation. By the evening, I counted 31 missed calls. The voicemails progressed from confusion to anger to sobs that tore at my heart. And yet, every time I considered picking up, the memory of her laughter returned. That carefree, dismissive sound as she brushed off my sacrifices like they were nothing. Finally, at 3 in the morning, I answered one call. Her voice was shaking, almost broken, as she begged me to tell her what had happened. She admitted she had said the words, but insisted they were only a joke to impress my aunt. She said she had always felt inferior around her sister's family, and she wanted to appear more sophisticated. She claimed she had never truly seen me as a walking wallet. But when I asked her point-blank, if I stopped giving you money forever, would our relationship stay the same? She paused for too long. Her answer came slowly, hesitant, and lacking conviction. Of course it would be the same, she said, but even she did not sound like she believed it. That moment broke something inside me. I realized that for years, our relationship had been intertwined with money in ways I could no longer untangle. I told her how much I had given over the years, $400,000, and her shocked gasp only fueled my anger. She tried to argue that they had never asked for such amounts, that these were genuine needs, not manipulation. But I reminded her of every single instance, the medical bills, the home repairs, the emergencies, that always seemed to come right after a conversation about their financial stress. She had no answer, only more tears. The next morning, my father showed up at my apartment. He looked exhausted, as if he hadn't slept since the calls began. He sat across from me in the living room, his shoulders slumped in a way I had never seen before. For the first time, my father looked small, almost defeated. He spoke slowly, explaining that their finances were worse than I realized. His pension had been cut due to district budget changes, and my mother's hours had been reduced before the pandemic. When I began covering their mortgage, they had shifted their own incomes toward other expenses, believing my support would be permanent. They had stopped saving, stopped building an emergency fund. Without even realizing it, they had restructured their entire lives around my contributions. Hearing him admit that hurt almost as much as my mother's words. It was one thing to be taken for granted. It was another to realize that they could not even survive financially without me. He insisted that my mother's comment about manipulation was wrong, that they had never intentionally plotted against me. But he did admit something else. Somewhere along the way, the line between gift and expectation had blurred. My money had become the foundation of their lives, and they could not even remember what it meant to stand on their own. Over that weekend, I thought about everything he said. I realized this was bigger than just hurt feelings. This was about breaking a cycle of dependency that I had created without even knowing it. Cutting them off completely would not just be cruel, it would be destructive. They were in their 60s with no safety net of their own. If I pulled away abruptly, they could lose their home, their stability, their future. And as angry as I was, I could not bear to watch that happen. So I called a meeting. My parents came to my apartment, and together we sat down with a financial advisor. For the first time, we spoke not as parent and child, but as adults facing hard truths. The advisor helped us lay out a plan. For the next 18 months, I would cover only their basic living expenses: utilities, property taxes, insurance, and a fixed $1,200 for food and necessities. Nothing more.
No vacations. No extras.
No emergencies that magically appeared at convenient times. During those months, they would attend financial counseling, build a realistic budget, and explore additional income options. My father agreed to look into substitute teaching, while my mother considered taking on flexible nursing assignments. At the end of 18 months, they would be independent again, or they would have to downsize to something they could afford without my help. It was one of the hardest conversations of my life. My mother cried almost the entire time, apologizing over and over. My father looked relieved, almost thankful, that a plan was finally in place. But I knew the real challenge was not in the numbers. It was in rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. I told my mother directly that her words had cut deeper than she could ever imagine. Calling me a walking wallet had made me question whether she valued me as a son at all. She tried to insist that she did, that it had all been a mistake. But I told her the truth. Words like that could not be erased with apologies. Only time and actions would prove whether she meant what she said now. 3 weeks have passed since that meeting, and the changes have been subtle but powerful. My mother calls me twice a week, but the conversations are different. She asks about my work, my health, my friends. She talks about books she's reading, recipes she's trying, little things that have nothing to do with money. My father has already begun substitute teaching and even takes on odd jobs for neighbors. For the first time in years, he sounds energized, as if he has found a purpose beyond waiting for my next deposit. The most striking change happened just 10 days ago. My mother called to tell me their dishwasher was making strange noises. In the past, this would have been a thinly veiled request for a new appliance. But this time, she simply shared that my father was going to try fixing it, and if not, they had found a store that sold affordable used ones. She did not ask for a dime. She was simply telling me about her day. I am not naive enough to believe everything is perfect now. Old patterns are hard to break, and 18 months is a long time. But for the first time in years, I feel like I am talking to my parents as people, not as dependents. I still love them, but I love them differently now, without the blindness that comes from equating love with sacrifice. And perhaps, slowly, they are learning to see me not as their wallet, but as their son.